Now we're going to talk about properties of 30, 60, 90-degree triangles. There's some special triangles out there, and this is one of them. So if we take an equilateral triangle, if all the sides are the same length, and I drew a line from the top of this equilateral triangle all the way to the bottom here, and drew like an altitude, if you will, then this would cut this equilateral triangle into two congruent 30, 60, 90-degree triangles. Remember, in an equilateral triangle, all of the angles also equal the same measure. So if we were to cut the top angle here, this vertex angle, in half, it would give me 30 and 30, right? And so we have the 30 degrees at the top, we have the 60 degrees, they say the same, and then this little box obviously means 90 degrees. And if this is the case, it creates special relationships with not just the angles, but also the side lengths. And as you can see, if it's equilateral, all the sides are the same. So let's say that every side length would be 2x. Well, if we cut this part in half, then it would cut the bottom of this triangle also in half, which would mean that this part right here would be x and this would be x, because x plus x equals 2x. And so therefore then we can look at just one of those triangles and we end up with a 30, not 36, a 30, 60, 90-degree triangle where this hypotenuse would be 2x, the shorter part would be x, and then if we use the Pythagorean theorem, we would be able to find out that the long part of the long leg would be, and I'm going to use an L to represent the long leg, would be L times the square root of 3. If you did the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, you would find that that would be what that long leg would measure. And we can use this to help us find missing side lengths. And this should also be in your formula chart, so you don't have to memorize those. Let's do some examples. In this picture, they ask us to find the x and y, this and this. So just to remember, I'm going to go ahead and say, remember that this is basically a 30, 60, 90-degree triangle, because this is 60, this is 90, this has to be a 30-degree angle right here. And if that's the case, we learned that the hypotenuse would be equal to 2x, the short leg would be equal to x, and the longest leg, I'm just going to go ahead and say it's x times the square root of 3. Previously I used L, but now I think it'll be easier to use x, so we can understand here. So first step is to label the sides with the, if you will, the formula of understanding that the hypotenuse is 2x, the shortest leg is x, and the longest leg is x times the square root of 3. That would be very helpful. So that's the first step that I would recommend that you do, is to label your picture. So I'm going to go ahead and say, first step is to label picture. The second step is to, set up equations and solve it, would be the third step. So we've already labeled it. Let's go ahead and set up our equations here. First, I want to solve for x. I can find x if I can see here that 15, this length is 15. 15 has to equal x times the square root of 3, right? And I can only see that if you've labeled it. So that's why it's very important that you label your picture. So I'm going to go ahead and set an equation and say x squared root of 3 has to equal 15. And now I can solve for x. I want x by itself, so I can go ahead and just divide both sides by the square root of 3. That reduces to 1, and I end up with x is equal to 15 divided by the square root of 3. You can put this in a calculator and get a decimal answer, or you can simplify this fraction, and if you remember, we never want to leave a radical or the square root sign as a denominator. And so to get rid of it, we are going to multiply the top and the bottom by that radical sign. And so we end up with this 15 square root of 3 over square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 9, which gives me 15 square root of 3 is equal to square root of 9 would be 3. Now 15 divided by 3, as you can see, I can divide 15 divided by 3. That's going to give me a 5. So this further simplifies to 5 times the square root of 3. And so if they want the answer in exact terms, this would be the process you would have to take. You have to remember to just multiply to get rid of the radical sign as the denominator. You have to multiply the top and the bottom by that same radical sign, and just keep simplifying through. If they accept decimal answers, then you could just easily put this in a calculator and just round your answer to whatever they're asking for. Okay, so this would be my x. Let's go ahead and find the next letter, which is y. Well, we know that y is equal to 2x, but we already know what 2x is, right? 2x, right? Y is equal to 2x. 2x, or x, is equal to 5 times the square root of 3. So I can go ahead and replace or substitute the x with 5 times the square root of 3. And we can just multiply here. And we're going to multiply the... we're going to leave the square root sign just intact. And we're just going to multiply 5 times 2. And we'll get 10 times the square root of 3. Is what your y is. Once again, if they ask for an exact answer or they accept decimal responses, then you would make sure you round it to whatever is acceptable or whatever is asked. All right, I hope this makes sense. Have fun practicing.